Welcome to the Drawing Board. I'm your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. If you joined me before here on the Drawing Board, welcome. If it's your first time with me, here's a quick rundown of what happens here on the show. Every episode of the Drawing Board, I invite a guest from around the entertainment industry, and we learn a little bit more about what they do. And while we learn about what they do, I'm also drawing them in real time. Pretty fun, right? Well, I'm super excited today because we have a very interesting guest with us because this is something that we haven't really discussed before here on the show, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of you who are going to be interested in this. If you've ever wondered how music ends up in movies and TV shows and things like that, or in cartoons, you're about to find out because this stuff is really awesome. He composes for animation and does a lot of awesome things. Please welcome my guest, Carlo Chiarotti. Hi there.
Hi. Hello.
And this is an interesting episode because we also have another guest with us who's going to be helping translate. So do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Leonardo Chiarotti, and I'm going to be translating my father's replies to the questions. Thank you.
Now, before we started, actually, the funny thing was I'm also going to introduce him as Captain Carlo because he's a big Star Trek fan as much as I am. So everyone's going to refer to him as Captain Carlo now.
Okay, perfetto.
So for kids who may not know what your type of job entails, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Allora, realizzo musiche per cartoni animati principalmente, anche per videogames, ultimamente realizzo quello che molti considerano l'anima dei cartoni animati, quindi ovvero la musica, ed è un lavoro bellissimo, anche se molto impegnativo. Questo mi permette di rimanere bambino ed è fantastico perché comunque attualmente sono compositore freelance e ho vari lavori, ma fare le musiche per cartoni animati è veramente incredibile. Ho in ponte alcuni lavori anche con artisti americani piuttosto famosi che spero possa vedere la luce fra poco. Nel 2017 ho fondato insieme a una mia ex allieva che è nata il mio stesso giorno un contenitore creativo, l'allieva si chiama Alice. Ho fondato questo contenitore creativo, si chiama Okubo Station, che è un nome di una stazione giapponese, di una metropolitana giapponese, dove lavorano diversi animatori, illustratori, musicisti, web design, ed è un ambiente praticamente dove ci sono tante condivisioni di esperienze e di contatti, ed è questa la forza dell'ambiente. Nel 2013, grazie alla Nemo Academy di Firenze, che è una scuola molto famosa anche a livello internazionale, dal 2014 ho potuto conoscere diversi animatori Disney, della Animation, della Studio Ghibli, della Pixar, e quindi ho cominciato a occuparmi di animazione. Loro hanno fatto una manifestazione, stanno facendo una manifestazione che si chiama Nemoland, che ospita e premia i migliori animatori, ospitandoli a Firenze. Posso citare Sandro Cleuso, che molto probabilmente conoscerete, Harry Goldberg, i gemelli Bancroft, oppure Kotabe, papà di Heidi, oppure Masami Suda, e anche Takahata, che è il socio di Miyazaki dello studio Ghibli. Quindi ho avuto la possibilità di conoscere tutti questi musicisti. L'Accademia sforna praticamente allievi bravissimi, sono famosi in tutto il mondo, cioè lavorano, più che altro sono conosciuti, e alla fine dell'anno del loro corso di animazione hanno realizzato questa masterclass dove praticamente in un mese fanno queste piccole animazioni, piccole animazioni di 5 minuti, dove appunto ci sono artisti del calibro appunto di quelli citati prima, e facciamo un'animazione. Io mi occupo praticamente della musica, quindi ho iniziato, questo per ora è un po' meno tutta la mia storia. Il mio sogno sarebbe partecipare a un episodio di Star Trek come capitano di un'astronave, e poi comunque vediamo quello che succederà.
All right, so I work on what many consider the soul of cartoons and shows, their music and soundtrack. It is a beautiful but also very demanding job, which really brings back those memories from when I was still a child. I'm currently a freelance composer, and right now I am working on multiple projects. One animated short film for a famous American artist, two video games, and two documentaries, one of which talks about the life of another historical animator. In 2017, I started my own studio together with Alicia, who is an illustrator and animator, and also one of my previous students, and my coworker Marco, who is also a friend of mine. The studio is called Okubo Station. Okubo is the name of a pretty famous Japanese subway stop. The reason we chose this name is because near the station in Japan, there are like a lot of famous artists and animators who have worked on really big names in this industry. And thanks to the Nemo Academy in Florence, which is globally distinguished for the quality of the courses it hosts, as well as the quality of its students who are well known and appreciated all over the world. I was able to take care of the musical part of one of their events. This event is called Nemoland. And Nemoland hosts and rewards great artists around the world, and including the most famous names and studios such as Disney, Pixar, Toei Animation, Studio Ghibli, etc., etc. And also the likes of Sandro Cleuso, Eric Goldberg, the Bancroft Brothers, the great Master Kotabe, Masami Suda, or even Master Takahata of the Ghibli studio, as well as many others. Every year, on the occasion of this event, which takes in a beautiful theater in the middle of Florence, I organize a concert as a director of another group that I personally founded a few years ago, which is called the Florence Pops Orchestra. Our arrangements are inspired by famous songs that gave life to a lot of projects that were made by the great artists mentioned earlier. And so my answer to the starting question is I work on the soul of animation music, which grants that little touch of magic to many great animated projects.
That was an incredible answer. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, because without the music that we hear in the backgrounds, animation would not be what we see it as when we see it finished on screen. So that's very exciting. Also, the funny thing, you mentioned Sandro Cleuso. We've actually had him here on the show. So my kiddos might remember Sandro from a couple episodes back. So this is kind of exciting because now you get to see the opposite side of what Sandro was talking about.
Yeah, Sandro Cleuso lives with my father in Florence here, and he's a great friend of his. Yeah.
Quindi, Carlo Chiarotti, tra l'altro, è cittadino italiano.
Yeah, and recently he's become a official citizen of Italy. So that's pretty,
Florence.
Love it.
To have such a name in our city.
That's amazing. He kept talking about how much he loved the city. So it's so much fun to hear the opposite side of this with more details to the story now.
Detto che è divertente sentire l'altra parte della storia.
Va bene. Okay.
So an interesting question. I always love asking this. You don't have to carbon date yourself because I know some people don't like doing that. But how long have you been doing this for?
Per quanto tempo stai facendo questo lavoro?
Dal 2000.
Sì, ma devi fare la domanda.
Allora, da quanto tempo faccio questo lavoro? Vabbè, ho terminato gli studi nel 90 e ho cominciato subito a insegnare musica e a fare l'orchestrale. Già componevo e arrangiavo piccole cose. Poi nel 2000 ho iniziato a fare i miei primi lavori con l'agenzia di pubblicità, spot pubblicitari e le famose sonore cellulari che hanno perseguitato un po' tutti, quindi tutto è nato da lì.
I finished my studies in the 90s and immediately started teaching music and working on my own orchestrations. At that time, I had already started composing, and arranging, but only for small projects. In the year 2000, I started working on my first real job for an advertising agency, which included commercials and ringtones for mobiles, which were very popular back then. And that's where it all started.
That is really cool. Now, you mentioned that you actually studied a little bit for this. When it comes to doing a job like this, do you think that a school like a college is necessary, or can it also rely on outside learning and just natural born talent?
Chiedo se una scuola tipo un college può essere utile oppure se è solo su base di talento e esperienza.
Allora, secondo me sì, credo sia fondamentale. Ora non trovo. Secondo me sì, è fondamentale fare una scuola. Va bene il talento, va bene la predisposizione, ma senza gli studi non si fa niente, nel senso è fondamentale studiare, anche perché poi arrivi fino a un certo punto e ti fermi, quindi non c'è altra cosa da fare, cioè o studi o rimani indietro, nel senso è quello. Secondo me sì, bisogna frequentare le migliori scuole e cercare di appassionarsi e di comunque condividere le proprie esperienze con altri allievi o con altri ragazzi che hanno le tue stesse passioni.
Okay. All right. So, first of all, he thinks that college is very important, regardless of what kind of job you do. But he also says that you kind of need the talent to maybe get started a bit faster than maybe somebody else who would have no talent. But in the end, it doesn't really matter because talent alone is not enough. He thinks that what you really need is both talent and education that helps you push through your limits and use your talent to the fullest.
That's a great answer. You know, I haven't had anybody really say about schooling pushing you to your limit so that way you can improve. That's a great way to go about thinking about it.
Non ho mai sentito parlarla questo modo.
Vale, grazie. Vale.
He's happy about it.
So, an interesting question I love getting to talk a little bit about is a lot of kids, when I've had the chance to talk with them, think that the only way to be good at a job is to participate in kind of like this hustle culture they see on the internet and only do a job all the time, but nothing else. But, you know, as humans, we have a lot of interests and things that we like to do outside of our jobs. So I love chatting a little bit about hobbies. Do you think that hobbies help us be better at our job? And if so, do you have any?
Ho detto quando parlo con i bambini che piace sempre di chiedere non solo del lavoro ma magari degli hobby, quindi ti chiede se hai degli hobby e se pensi siano importanti per il lavoro.
Allora sì, è una domanda non seria, cioè una domanda molto seria, quella degli hobby, è una cosa anzi serissima secondo me. Io appunto sono un fan di Star Trek, ne condivido le finalità e quindi sono un uomo della federazione, un uomo della federazione dei pianeti uniti e quindi lunga vita e prosperità ovviamente. Spero di musicare un film di Star Trek e magari fare una comparsa a un comandante nazionale, come ho detto prima, anche un alieno. Quindi sì, direi di sì. Infatti sto parlando, scusate che c'è.
It's a good question. Hobbies are a very important subject. As you all know by now, I think, I am a huge fan of Star Trek. I agree with its ideals and I am a man of the United Federation of the Planets in all respects. Live long and prosper is my favorite quote, and a dream of mine would be to compose music for a Star Trek movie, or maybe make an appearance as a spaceship commander, or maybe even as an alien. So I think hobbies are very important, regardless of whether it includes your job or not.
That is awesome. And if we have anybody watching this that has any connection to Star Trek, you know who to contact now for that.
Ho detto che se c'è qualcuno che ha connessione
Allora, speriamo.
he would be very happy.
Così.
On to a more serious topic, because this tends to go hand in hand. The industry is a very talented industry. There's a lot of incredible people out there who do composition stuff for work. So sometimes I suppose it can be a little hard to get a job. And for some kids, that's not the easiest thing, because it's a very competitive field it comes across. And not all kids are competitive unless they like play sports. Do you think it's important for kids to find a healthy balance between a competitive spirit, but also being able to learn from others and make friends with others who do the same thing as them?
Se per te è importante per i bambini avere una bilancia tra un bilanciamento tra la competizione e il fare amici con gli altri.
Sì, direi che è fondamentale la competizione ed è fondamentale per i bambini, serve a crescere ovviamente, perché la competizione comunque li mette a lavorare sodo e comunque è importantissima al pari passo della visione della competizione, la condivisione, assolutamente come nel mio coworking la condivisione delle esperienze del lavoro è fondamentale, quindi sì, assolutamente tutte e due, competizione e condivisione.
Well, being competitive in this field is essential, but I personally take every challenge very seriously, but with extreme humility. But as I often say, and always tell my coworkers, the connection with other artists of my same field are the basis of growth, both as a person and as an artist. So this should not only apply to me, but also to kids. It is important that kids learn the balance between sharing and being competitive. So I would say that being competitive is important, but having healthy connections with other artists is even more important. And a balance between the two is basically essential, not only in my field, but in every other field.
Digli tra l'altro che io ho un gemello uguale a me, tra l'altro se vuole intervistare il direttore dell'accademia, e se non fosse stato per la competizione che abbiamo avuto io e lui, magari nessuno di noi due sarebbe dove è ora. Quindi...
He says that he learned this thing at a very young age, because he also has a twin brother, and competition between brothers is given.
Luca, ecco qua.
Yeah, his name is Luca, and he's basically the same as him without glasses. And the difference is
Luca.
While he's a composer,
Carlo e
Luca is he's a director at the Academy, Nemo Academy, where many great artists, such as Sandro Klause, which we mentioned earlier, visited. And
se non si fosse stata competizione, nulla.
If they hadn't been in competition since a very young age, maybe none of them would be where they are now.
That is a great point you brought up, especially about humility, because I think that's a lot of times something that gets lost when people have a competitive spirit, is they forget that it's not always, that they're the best in the industry. It's just, maybe that they're more of a better fit for the job at the time. So definitely a great thing to keep in mind.
Ho detto che mi piace la cosa dell'umiltà, perché a volte magari le persone non prendono il lavoro ma perché sono migliori, ma perché sono un miglior chef. Riempiono bene il posto, diciamo.
Ok, quindi è una domanda. È una domanda.
No, perché sono
So a bit hand in hand with competition, I think, within this industry is rejection, because oftentimes when you're competing for jobs, you do get rejections a lot, which may not be easy for people to deal with if it's their first time having to go through it. Is rejection something a kid should be taking personal, or can they use it as a learning experience to improve their work and also improve their experiences down the road?
Il rifiuto è normale.
Sì.
E succede spesso, e ti ha chiesto se i bambini dovrebbero Dovrebbero vedere il rifiuto come una cosa personale, come un'esperienza personale, come
una cosa di crescita.
una cosa di crescita.
Sì, niente, assolutamente fa bene il rifiuto, è bene ci sia, è bene che imparino a gestirlo e serve soltanto a crescere. Ovviamente quando sono piccoli ci sono i genitori che li possono aiutare o i compagni, però è fondamentale che affrontino il rifiuto per conto proprio e che li aiuti a crescere, assolutamente.
Of course, rejecting comes from a very young age, ever since parents say, I don't know, maybe you make a request as a small child and your parents say no. Rejection at that point should be something you learn along the way while you grow. And at the point where you need to get a job and maybe you get rejected, it should be something that you face personally, but also something that you can maybe face with the help of others as well. And rejection is a great way to face your challenges and weaknesses. So it's not only something negative, it can be transformed into something positive that maybe helps you along your way in life.
That is a great point. I think that that's a good thing to be able to rely on others as well when you're facing a rejection. That's not something that you hear often, so definitely a good thing for any kid looking at any job to keep in mind for sure.
Ha detto che è contenta e ha detto che serve anche l'aiuto di qualcun altro.
Certo, assolutamente sì, assolutamente vero. Da soli non si fa quasi mai niente.
He says that alone you will never accomplish anything.
Definitely a great point. So, a bit of a more fun question because not everything's always serious when it comes to a job. You've gotten to work on a lot of cool things, I'm sure. I have to ask, is there any in particular things that you worked on that just kind of stand out as a favorite to you? I know it's kind of like picking a favorite child, which is nearly impossible, but...
Detto che tra I progetti che hai fatto, qual è il tuo preferito, quello di cui vorresti parlare?
Cosa vuole parlare? Li liamo tutti ora, non ci penso un secondo.
He says he's thinking about it because he has a lot of projects that he loves, so he's got to choose like carefully.
I know, it's a very hard question. I always tell people, I'm like, I ask the hard ones, I'm so sorry.
Detto mi dispiace che è una domanda difficile.
Sì, è molto difficile.
He agrees, it's a very hard question.
Non trovo la domanda.
Rispondi normale.
No, allora, ci sono due serie, due pitch, due serie a cui ho lavorato e che si chiamano Crash Casanova e Devil Lou, sono una per bambini e una per meno bambini, per adulti. Mi piacerebbe che magari fossero visti da qualche di Netflix o di Amazon o di Apple per poterli sviluppare. Sono due lavori a cui tengo molto, come tengo molto al lavoro che ho qui dietro, che è questo, che è blu, che spero che si possa portare avanti, e qui ci saranno tante sorprese a breve, magari poi ci risentiremo.
There are two shows that I worked on that I really enjoyed working on, and those two are, one is called Crash Casanova. It's a show for kids, while the other is called Devil Lou, which is a show for adults, not for kids. And his his wish is that maybe someday they'll be noticed by someone over at the big streaming companies like Amazon or Netflix, and he wishes that maybe someday they'll make an appearance there and maybe become some small successes of his own. And another work that he really enjoyed working on is called Blue, and it's the small poster that's right behind him. And he wishes that it's gonna have a lot of surprises in it instead. I'm not sure what kind of surprises, but he seems happy about it. So
Well, that sounds awesome. And I know that Netflix and Amazon have been picking up a lot of different animated pieces lately. So hopefully they'll be able to pick that up and we'll be able to see it. And my kiddos will be able to go check that out soon. That would be really awesome for sure.
ho detto che recentemente Netflix e Amazon hanno preso tanti molto.
Ma non prendono noi, stiamo aspettando, dice, li stiamo aspettando.
He says they are waiting patiently for the day they get noticed.
So when it comes to this industry, there has been a lot of changes made, but I still feel we have a little bit to go when it comes to this. When it comes to diversity and seeing new and different faces in this industry, do you think it's important for kids to see people who look like them, speak the same language that they do, come from the same places that they do, doing the jobs that they want to try out when they're older?
È importante che i bambini vedano persone fare lavoro, cioè fare persone come loro fare il lavoro che gli piace.
Cioè, è importante che i bambini vedano persone come noi,
Ce l'ho già davanti.
persone come noi.
Sono come loro fare il lavoro che farebbe.
Sì, assolutamente è fondamentale per la loro crescita e per fargli capire che comunque anche alla nostra età, quando arriveranno alla nostra età, continueranno a sognare e quindi è importantissimo sì, che vedano quello che facciamo. Sì.
Yes, absolutely. Children often copy or imitate adults, and if they can empathize with them through their profession, I consider that a very positive thing. And it is important that they see people who look like them, or I don't know, maybe their dream jobs. And even at our age, it's important that they keep dreaming. And because having a dream at all times, regardless of your age, is crucial to push on in life.
That's a great point. I think even for adults, it's good to see somebody who looks like that, like us, or that we can relate to doing something that we want to do. Because you're absolutely right. We're all still dreamers, despite what age we're at.
Hai ragione che tutti hanno un sogno, indipendentemente dall'età che abbiamo.
Io sogno ancora, dire.
He still dreams.
On the topic of still dreaming, I think that's a great thing to bring up is a lot of times artists in any capacity are very big dreamers. We're kind of like big kids trapped in adult bodies. There's something that we want to try out and still do, even if we've accomplished some really cool things. Is there anything that you haven't gotten to do yet or somebody you haven't gotten to work with yet that you'd like to eventually?
Sull'argomento del sognare, se c'è qualcosa che ancora non hai, su qualcosa su cui vorresti lavorare, ma ancora non hai avuto la possibilità di metterci mano.
Un film di Star Trek.
He said a Star Trek movie.
That's going to remain the theme of this episode. We just need to find somebody to get him in Star Trek, just in some capability.
Sì, ok. Vabbè, vanno bene anche i cartoni animati Star Trek, ci sono una serie.
He says it's fine with spin-offs, anything Star Trek related is fine for him, so yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So a few more questions for you. These are some of my favorite because I think they're very important for people to hear and learn ahead of time. When it comes to this industry, a lot of times we're seeing a lot of things posted on social media, and I like to call it a highlight reel because we never really see the steps it takes to get to the final product. We just see the final product. Do you think it's important for kids to be able to learn that it's okay to make mistakes, whether it be a big one, a small one, and can these mistakes actually lead to a happy outcome?
Spesso dei post sul social media dove mettono gli highlight reel, che sono praticamente dei montaggi del prodotto finito. E ha chiesto se per caso sarebbe utile per le persone vedere invece del prodotto finito il processo di come si fa, per vedere gli errori che si fanno.
Assolutamente sì. Io fra l'altro sul mio canale YouTube ho proprio un post con un filmato dove faccio vedere quali sono i passaggi che affronta un musicista come me, cioè chi affronta, chi compone per cartoni animati, che è un po' più diverso da comporre per film come persone vere. Lì bisogna proprio cercare di indirizzare la musica a quello che è il pubblico, quindi sono bambini, sono molto difficile azzeccare la musica per i bambini, quindi sì, è fondamentale conoscere e far vedere quali sono tutti i percorsi di un determinato lavoro, assolutamente sì. Io lo faccio spesso con i miei allievi, di far vedere quali sono i percorsi per evitare di fare poi certi errori, ma anche gli errori ci sono.
Yes, absolutely. On my YouTube channel myself, I have a post about a video on which displays what kind of thought process I go through when making some music for a show or a cartoon. And there's a lot of things that you have to think about when making music, because you listen to the final product and obviously you're not really wondering how it's made. But for something like kids show, kids tend to like a very particular like of music, while adults may prefer another kind of music. So there's a lot of little thoughts that go behind making music. And he also said that it's harder to work on music for cartoons because you have to kind of match what's going on in the cartoon based on sounds and instruments, and that's not something that's always easy. And he tries to help his students at Nemo Academy with web graphic design, which is completely another field, but he still thinks that it's important to know both how to do things and how to prevent the most common mistakes that someone goes through when making basically anything, not just music, but anything.
Da dire che anche io, grazie a loro, so qual è diciamo, il percorso che fa un animatore per arrivare, cioè qual è il percorso di uno studio per arrivare poi al prodotto finale. Io mi occupo della musica, ma conosco bene quali sono tutti i passaggi che vengono fatti in animazione, quindi dal background, il character design, clean up, background color, cioè diverse cose.
He says that by working on music for animated videos or shows, he's learned quite a lot about that industry as well. And he's learned himself a few, maybe the steps to make an animation and the mistakes that go with it. Because, of course, working with music means you work frame by frame. And while composing music, he goes through all of these and he notices what part of the animation is for character design, what part of the animation goes for the background, and he tries. Yeah, there's a lot of steps that he's learned himself, and he's also learned to recognize the mistakes that maybe someone else does as well.
È come guidare benissimo una macchina e non conoscere nemmeno come è composta, cioè nemmeno sapere come è fatto il motore, è uguale.
He says that basically working on music without knowing what kind of mistakes there are, what kind of parts and steps you have to go through, it's like driving a car without knowing what's inside the car. You don't know maybe what's an engine. How do you know how to drive a car? You don't know. Maybe you don't know what kind of wheels you have, and you don't know that maybe you can drive on snow. And it's something that you kind of have to know beforehand. And without knowing your mistakes and every step, you can't really work towards the final product.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that because that's something I feel a lot of people tend to forget is that it's okay to make those mistakes and that they actually happen a lot in this industry. I think a lot of people, because we all just see something on the screen, we're like, oh, it's so perfect, but it's not always. So, really great information to know.
È importante sapere che tipo di errori ci sono.
So the process for this, I'm sure, is quite different compared to the process of, say, actually animating something that one of your compositions go along with, or teaching others how to do it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that process, like what goes into it?
C'è un po' il progresso, cioè il processo che fai quando vai a creare una musica con un'animazione per fare in modo che combaci e anche il processo con cui insegni.
Ok, innanzitutto io non sono un animatore, quindi anche io quando mi confronto con gli animatori cerco di imparare più cose possibili sul loro lavoro e sul loro processo di lavoro, appunto. Ovviamente ho delle dritte, cioè delle informazioni sull'animazione da parte dell'art director, cioè del direttore, del produttore, del regista del film, dell'animazione. Cerco di andare dietro a quello che mi viene chiesto, quindi trovare il mood, cioè trovare la giusta atmosfera del cartone animato, ma molto spesso cerco di portarlo su quello che sento io con quell'animazione. E quindi niente, il processo è praticamente seguire quello che ti dicono, ma cercare di fare un po' a modo proprio, ovviamente senza uscire troppo da quello che ti hanno chiesto. Lo stesso discorso faccio con gli allievi. Io, come ho detto prima, io insegno quelle che sono le procedure, ma molto spesso sono loro che hanno delle ottime idee che comunque possono servire. È anche vero che nella produzione della musica bisogna seguire determinati ritmi e processi perché sennò non se ne esce fuori.
Okay, first of all, I'm not an animator, so I also try to learn new things on their jobs and the work processes when I undertake a new project. Of course, I have some information on the animation thanks to the art director, which is present in any project that I work on, mostly. And I always try to find the right atmosphere and mood of the animation. That's how I choose what kind of music to make. Most of the time, instead of just following what is said by the art director, I also try to sync the music based on what I feel when I watch the animation, so that I can find what's the best thing that fits the animation itself by basing it on what I actually see. Of course, you shouldn't strive too far away from what the art director tells you, but he says that it's important to know how far you can go while maintaining the original vision and also adding your little your own to the project, to the music. And he says that the same thing happens with the students because, of course, all he can do is say, tell them the steps to completing a project. But how to do those steps is also up to them and their ideas. So while they must follow a certain process, they should try to find their own way of bringing that process to end. So in music, you have to follow certain rules and rhythms, and you can't really do without it. But other than that, you should always try to base everything on your own feelings. when making music for anything, especially animations, he said.
Io comunque dico sempre che l'animatore è chi il regista deve fare regista e il musicista deve fare regista, il musicista, quindi vorrei che ci lasciassero fare il lavoro perché siamo noi compositori, non sono loro. Quindi
he says something he often encounters is, well, first of all, he said that animators should be animators, composers should be composers.
io non vado a dire all'animatore come fare il suo lavoro, quindi preferirei che anche lui non facesse lo stesso con me.
He says that he doesn't want to tell an animator on how to do his job, but he often encounters animators or people in general who try to tell him how to do his job. So he's not happy with it, and he says that more than, cioè più che indicazioni, cioè più che indicazioni precise te vuoi delle cose, no? Cioè vuoi delle dritte generali, però puoi farlo te, poi il lavoro lo fai te.
No, non è che vorrei che magari a volte mi chiedono delle cose che non ci incastrano niente e vorrebbero magari dire mi fai la musica di Star Wars, magari è un cartone animato che non c'entra niente perché quello è un parte di Star Wars, devo dire. A volte succede questo.
He says that sometimes it happens that maybe an animator asks for certain things in the music that he just feels won't fit at all. It's this comparison. He said that he would be like requesting to add Star Wars music to a project, and though Star Wars doesn't have anything to do with that project. So that's what he meant with sometimes people tell him what to do, but they don't really know themselves it's going to turn out well or not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good thing to keep in mind too, especially about having your feelings in your work. That often makes your work better, as well as figuring out what fits with the piece, even though somebody may not think the same way on the wavelength that you do. So definitely great tips to keep in mind. I think that's very interesting information.
È molto interessante che insomma, è bello vedere la comparazione tra chi chiede di aggiungere cose e chi sa effettivamente cosa aggiungere.
Fondamentale.
So a couple last questions for you. These are my favorite. I think they kind of like, tie everything nicely together. We've been in a pandemic for quite a while now, which has made a lot of changes to the industry. One of them that has been making a big change is working remotely from our own homes. Do you see that this could possibly be something used more in the future where people could work together and collaborate remotely to compose different pieces for animated films or shows?
Ho detto che stiamo nella pandemia e che quindi ora c'è un argomento importante è la condivisione del lavoro a distanza, e dice se per caso vedi un futuro in cui per il tuo settore della musica dove più persone possono lavorare insieme e comporre musica per uno show, per qualcosa online.
Sì, diciamo che in questo lavoro la pandemia non ha fatto venire fuori niente di nuovo, nel senso che succede tuttora, ma anche per la pandemia, che i musicisti si ritrovino a collaborare tra di loro, non solo, anche a far suonare orchestre a chilometri di distanza, per dire dall'America all'Europa, viceversa. È abbastanza comune questo tipo di condivisione, questo tipo di metodologia di lavoro. Diciamo che non è venuto fuori niente di nuovo, nel senso purtroppo siamo rilegati tutti nei propri studi, nelle proprie case, ma grazie alla tecnologia riusciamo comunque a fare il nostro lavoro, anzi forse a maggior ragione, visto che questa noi la tecnologia già la utilizziamo da tempo, diciamo che non c'è stato un grosso cambiamento. È stato divertente però dirigere un'orchestra in streaming, quello sì, in diretta a Zoom. diciamo che con quel compositore.
Cioè, un posto da solo.
Ho composto anche a distanza, abbiamo fatto anche qualche lavoro a distanza, io con la webcam accesa e suonando un po' il pianoforte cercando di fare un arrangiamento, un lavoro a distanza, cioè normalissima routine.
Yes, this pandemic hasn't affected this job that much. That's because musicians often collaborate with each other even before the pandemic was even a thing. Not just in person, but online as well, because he says there are many different groups online that share their their interest for music and composing, and it does happen online. It doesn't just happen in person. This was a thing that he says happened a lot even before the pandemic between America and Italy and a lot of other countries. And he says that technology makes his job even better than before. So they were used to using this kind of technology already before. So it hasn't changed that that part of his job at all. Same thing as before. However, he says that working and composing on orchestral concert and streaming it was quite the unique experience. Of course, it's not quite easy to do this, but he still found it quite fun. And he says it's probably gonna be normal routine for him and other composers to do this kind of job online, because if it was already quite common before. With the pandemic, it's even more widespread, so it's obviously going to happen more.
Poi i musicisti di oggi sono tutti un po' mezzi pazzeretti tecnologici, sono un po' tutti nerd, quindi sanno usare le tecnologie benissimo.
He says that most modern composers are quite, nerd. They're quite good at technology, so that makes everything a little bit easier as well.
That's awesome to hear. I love hearing that there's opportunities, maybe not even working like directly in a studio itself, but working from different locations with others around the globe. It sounds like a very collaborative process.
Ho detto che mi piace sentire che la gente fa queste cose online a distanza.
Mi fa piacere.
He says he really likes this online thing as well. So
anche questa è una collaborazione.
There's also a collaboration with us online.
Absolutely. So now comes the part of the show where I'm going to give you the time to talk about whatever you feel like. So any projects you're working on, anything you'd like to promote, please feel free to share with us.
Questa è la parte dello show dove parlare progetti.
Ok, posso parlare di quello che mi pare? Io devo un po' cosa posso dire. Posso dire che chi volesse affrontare questo lavoro non si abbatta alle prime difficoltà, va bene? E continui sempre a sognare. Io, d'altra parte, sono arrivato a questa età un po' in là, sempre cercando di sognare, ed è quello che mi porta avanti. Ovviamente ci sono momenti bui, momenti tristi, però quello che mi fa andare avanti è sognare che magari la mia musica possa emozionare anche una sola persona, mi basterebbe, quindi è quello a cui tengo di più, ovviamente al mio piccolino e alla mia famiglia, a tutti quelli che mi conoscono. Quindi comunque posso dire che non perdere mai la possibilità di sognare, cioè pensare sempre che qualcosa di grande ognuno di noi è destinato a fare nel proprio campo, quindi il mio consiglio è andare avanti e sognare, continuare a sognare.
Progetti, self-promote.
Voglio promuovere i miei progetti? potrei promuovere, appunto, se vogliono andare sul mio sito carlochiarotti.com, possono vedere un po' di progetti. Mi piacerebbe effettivamente che andassero avanti i due progetti che ho parlato prima, quindi Crash Casanova e Devil Blue. Sono sottotitolati in inglese, quindi magari possono farsi un'idea. Secondo me sono due cose veramente belle. E poi il mio prospetto è che appunto si possa sempre fare qualcosa di nuovo. Ecco, i musicisti si annoiano spesso, quindi comunque novità sono sempre ben accette, come l'intervista di stasera.
Okay. First of all, he would like to say that whoever wants to face this job, you should never break down in the face of defeat, but always keep going regardless of what happens. There are happy and sad moments, and even at his age, what keeps him going is the thought of even a single person being able to enjoy and share his music. And that's what keeps him going, because he also thinks that anybody in their respective fields, anybody could do something great in life. And everybody's destined to do something great in life at some point. So never break down in the face of defeat and always keep going. As for his projects, he would really like to people to visit his website, because he also has all of the projects he has, especially the ones he talked about earlier, which are Crash Casanova and Devil Loop, which have English titles. If any viewer wants to check them out, he will be happy to know. And yeah, his website is the way to go for any of his projects. And he also said that musicians are often bored, and any new news and something to make the day a little less boring, like as he said, this interview is very well received, and he's really enjoyed the time to talk about his profession, and he's really liked the questions, and he was very excited for this. So
ringrazio, perché anche prima è una bella donna, una bella ragazza, quindi comunque lo meglio.
Yeah, he congratulates you on your I don't know.
Non si vergogna, ok.
No, I actually don't know the word.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful advice for kids who are looking to get into this industry. I'm going to make sure to have the link to your site below so anyone can go check out your site and your work. I'm definitely going to make sure to check out those two shows after this because they sound absolutely awesome. And thank you so much for spending your time coming on the show. Absolutely had a blast, and thank you so much for translating for us. That was absolutely awesome. Really fun experience. But now comes my favorite part of the show, where I'm going to show you what I was making of you while we were chatting. I'm going to warn you in advance, these lights in my studio, they're very tricky. They do the job for everything else, but they love to mess with my screen. So I'm going to send you an actual copy after this, but I'm going to try my best to get it up in here without any issues. Let's see if I can.
Wow, spettacolare, bellissimo. Mi hai fatto più bello, ancora più bello, grazie.
He says you made him look even better than he actually looks. So I mean, he said amazing, and he's very happy to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Grazie mille.
Thank you again so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you both on today, and thank you again to everyone who tuned in. Again, I am your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. Catch you next time on the drawing board.
Grazie.
Great.